Good morning, everyone. Um, so, Virgo, let's talk about what astrology actually offers versus what gets sold to you as cosmic certainty. Hmm. Your sun sign is one data point, one position in one system describing one aspect of psychological tendency, not your destiny, not your daily fortune, not predictor of what will happen to you based on birth month. Astrology as symbolic framework that has value, understanding archetypal energies, recognizing patterns, using planets as metaphor for psychological dynamics. That's legitimate practice with thousands of years of development. But all Virgos must watch because amazing reading with so much power, that's not astrology. That's audience segmentation for content marketing. That's dividing viewers into 12 groups and telling each group they're special in hopes they'll engage. Can you tell the difference between astrological framework and marketing tactic? Develop that discernment or you'll be perpetually manipulated. Because here's what must watch combined with profanity creates: artificial urgency through shock language. The profanity signals that creator is so overwhelmed by what they're seeing that they can't contain their reaction in professional language. But that's performance, that's technique, that's creating emotional contagion so you feel like something extraordinary is happening even before you know what the content actually contains. And it works. People click, people watch, people engage with content that performs amazement more than with content that delivers substance without theatrics. So creators use it, not because the content warrants it, but because the performance increases engagement. Are you responding to actual content or to performed emotion? Notice what's actually driving your engagement, because I need to address what so much power promises. Power to do what? Power over what? What specific capability is being offered through this reading? The phrase is intentionally vague because if they specified power to manifest relationship or power to attract wealth or power to overcome obstacles, then the claim could be tested and potentially disproven. But so much power without specification, that's unfalsifiable. You fill in whatever power you're seeking: relationship power, financial power, personal power, creative power. And when you feel empowered after watching, whether through genuine insight or just through consuming content that validates you, you attribute that to the reading. You credit the creator with giving you power, but you already had power. The reading didn't give it to you. The reading at most reminded you it exists. Or you just feel temporarily energized by consuming validating content. What power are you actually seeking? Get specific about what you need versus what you're being promised, because here's what sun sign readings actually offer: archetypal description of psychological tendencies associated with Virgo energy: organized, detail oriented, service focused, analytical, practical, sometimes perfectionistic or critical. If you have strong Virgo placements, you might recognize those tendencies in yourself, might find value in content that addresses how to work with those energies skillfully, but that value exists whether or not the reading is amazing or contains so much power. The archetypal framework is useful, independent of theatrical delivery, and that value doesn't predict your specific outcomes, doesn't tell you what will happen this week, doesn't promise that all Virgos are about to experience breakthrough or receive blessing or manifest desire. It just describes energy. You decide how to work with it. Are you seeking archetypal framework or specific predictions? One is useful. The other is entertainment masquerading as guidance. Because I want to talk about what happens to people who consume lots of sun sign content. They start attributing everything to their sign. They start explaining their behavior through astrological lens rather than through personal responsibility. They start waiting for transits or predictions to tell them when to act rather than acting from their own discernment, and that's astrology misused. That's taking symbolic framework and making it deterministic. That's surrendering agency to system that was never meant to remove your power to choose. Real astrology empowers choice by illuminating patterns. Fake astrology removes choice by suggesting your sun sign determines your fate. Which are you consuming? Your relationship to personal responsibility reveals the answer, because here's what all Virgos must watch actually means. It means the creator wants Virgo identifying viewers to click, wants to segment audience, wants to create feeling of personalization, even though millions of people share that sun sign. It doesn't mean there's actually information that all Virgos specifically need. Doesn't mean the reading addresses something unique to Virgo experience. Doesn't mean watching will provide value unavailable elsewhere. It just means if you identify as Virgo and you're susceptible to urgency language, you're the target demographic for this content. And if you watch, if you engage, if you share, you're participating in business model. You're providing engagement metrics that determine whether creator continues making this kind of content. Nothing wrong with that if you're getting value, but at least be aware of the exchange. At least recognize that must watch is sales language, not spiritual imperative. Are you aware you're consuming product, or do you think you're receiving divine guidance? Understanding the difference protects you from exploitation, because I also need to address the profanity. Holy shit and similar expressions. They're shock language designed to grab attention in crowded content landscape. They signal that creator is breaking professional norms because they're so overwhelmed by what they're experiencing. But it's calculated, it's technique, it's using transgression of language norms to create sense of authenticity and urgency. Real overwhelming insight doesn't require profanity to communicate its significance. The insight speaks for itself. So when creator performs shock through language, when they use profanity to communicate amazement, they're compensating. They're using delivery to create impact that content might not generate on its own merit. Can you see through the performance to assess actual substance? Strip away the delivery and evaluate what's actually being said. Because here's what people who get real value from astrology do. They study their full chart, not just sun sign. They look at moon, rising, planetary placements, aspects, houses. They understand astrology as complex symbolic system, not as 12 category personality sorter. They use it as reflective tool, not as predictive authority. They consider astrological weather as context for self-awareness, not as determinant of outcomes. They maintain agency. They recognize that transits describe energy, not fate, that challenging aspects create conditions, not certainties, that they still choose how to navigate whatever astrological conditions exist. They don't need content telling them they must watch. They seek information that helps them understand symbolic language more deeply. Which approach are you taking? Your consumption patterns reveal your relationship to astrology because ultimately, here's the situation, content is screaming that all Virgos must watch because amazing reading with so much power, and maybe there's useful content there. Maybe there's decent description of Virgo energy or current transits affecting Virgo placements or archetypal patterns worth considering. But the value, if it exists, is independent of the hysterical delivery. The substance stands or falls on its own merit, not on how many exclamation points or profanities frame it. So if you watch, watch critically. Assess whether content actually provides useful framework or whether it's just validating generalizations delivered with theatrical urgency. And recognize that you don't must watch anything. You choose what to consume based on whether it serves you, not based on which content screams loudest. That's your power, not some promised power in the reading, but your power to choose consciously what you allow into your awareness. Use it or surrender it to content that demands your attention through manufactured urgency. Your choice, your responsibility, your consequence. Choose based on what actually serves your growth, not on what performs amazement most convincingly, because growth happens quietly through consistent practice, through deepening understanding, through choosing consciously over time, not through consuming content that promises power while actually just providing entertainment. Know the difference. Choose accordingly. Sun signs describe tendencies, not destinies. 700 million Virgos aren't experiencing the same reality. Stop consuming generalized predictions and start working with actual astrological framework if you want real insight, or just admit you're here for entertainment and stop pretending it's guidance. Either is fine. But be honest about which you're choosing